So, you should watch Rebels. Star Wars Rebels. You should watch it. It's really good. So the reason I'm making this video is because the Ahsoka trailer just came out, and I'm really excited because I love Rebels, and the Ahsoka show is basically gonna be Rebels season 5, but in live action. But I don't know how many people like Rebels or watch it. I remember when it first started airing, people didn't really like it, saying like, "Oh, it's just a kid's show. Oh, the animation is really weird." I do get it. Yeah, have you seen Anakin? Yeah, I get it. But consider this. Without the filter of the rebel style, could you imagine Hera and Kanan already look this good in the show? Imagine if it had the Clone Wars style. Like, that is just, the general public would not be able to handle it. Ahsoka's coming up, and I figure some people would want context, and some people would want a refresher. It's about 25 hours to watch all of Star Wars Rebels with no commercials, which is fine. It actually sounds pretty reasonable to me. But I also remember some people have lives that don't revolve around Star Wars, which I don't understand. Yeah, they might have other stuff to do. They might have work or they might have school, and I have both, but I prioritize Star Wars. People have lives, and some people might not want to sit down for 25 hours and watch the best animated show that's existed ever. And those people are just thinking like, oh, what, it's too much. But then you look at the trailer and you're like, who's this Mando girl? Who's this Twi'lek lady? What's that orange droid doing? Who's the guy in the hologram? And who's this blue guy that shows up? Who's this blue guy that shows up out of nowhere that everybody's obsessed with? And like, what's Ahsoka gonna be doing? And that is all answered in Rebels, or rather, all the context is in Rebels. But it's not just knowing what's going on in Ahsoka. That is not the only reason to watch Rebels by any means. It provides a lot of lore for shows like The Mandalorian, especially. As you see, Rebels, the main cast of characters, has a Mandalorian character. And so we got to learn a lot about Mandalore. You learn all about the Darksaber. You get to know Bo-Katan. You learn about the space whales. You get that cameo from the purple alien in The Mandalorian that made me scream so loud that my dog got scared. You get a deeper understanding of the Force and how the Force works in the world of Star Wars. You get a found family. You get the quintessential example of a Jedi who's probably, how do I say this? Kanan Jarrus is the best Jedi, and you can fight me. You get a droid with less impulse control and more murder instincts than R2, which is chaotic. You get Lothcats. You get a term coined by CJ the X called "no character left behind."
There's a phrase I use to define a characteristic that my favorite pieces of world building have in common. No character left behind. In our reality, every single person has a backstory. Every single person has a function in society. People are deep and everything is interconnected. So stories with the no character left behind ethos are stories that capture the imagination due to their optimization of their fictional world. It resembles ours the way that everything is connected.
Every character at some point is my favorite. They all have so much depth. They all go through arcs, and it's just wonderful. Speaking of arcs, you get a redemption arc rivaling Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. If I'm being honest, it might not reach that high, but only because that's such a high standard for redemption arcs. You get an explanation for the do or do not, there is no try quote. You get basically just constant humor that's matched with the most heartbreaking and emotional moments that probably shouldn't be on a children's network. You get to watch the rise and the formation of the rebellion. Maul is in this.
Seize the knowledge.
Being Maul.
Don't remember.
He's chaotic.
Secrets.
It's fun.
So long ago.
He's crazy.
Kenobi.
He screams Kenobi a lot.
Kenobi!
It's great. You get characters that deal with the dark side and have to learn that things aren't always black and white or light and dark. There's a gray area. There's an entire character dedicated to the gray area. Anyway, you get that Ahsoka and Vader scene that I know you've seen, because I've met people that have no interest in Rebels, but they have watched that scene with Ahsoka and Vader, and it is just beautiful and it's so meaningful. You get to see how other cultures view the Force, which I just think is really cool. I'm kind of like a a world building nerd. It's the thing that I like most when I'm doing my own writing or creative whatever. Like you have the Ashla and the Bogan, and it's just Lasats are so cool. Lasats are my favorite alien. I just love it. Star Wars is at its best when it's allowed to be dumb and silly and do weird stuff. That's why the prequels are so popular now. Like every moment in the prequels is memed. You know, everybody remembers the sand monologue.
I don't like sand.
Everybody remembers Yoda pranking Luke. Hit your droid with a stick, I will. Steal your ration bar, I will. Make fun of you for being a twink, I will. Everybody remembers, oh, I was gonna go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters. Star Wars is at its greatest when it's allowed to be silly, and I wholeheartedly believe that. And I will probably end up making an entire video about that. Anyway, that's probably enough rambling about how much I love Rebel. So anyway, how's this whole thing gonna work? This is gonna be a series of videos. You're gonna watch Rebels. I'm gonna watch Rebels. We're all gonna watch Rebels. We're gonna do it separately though. We're gonna be watching them in batches. Not that kind of batch. I encourage you to watch the episodes in preparation, but I'm not your dad. I can't stop you from watching if you want to watch this video without seeing Rebels. Anyway, you can watch it. You cannot. I encourage you to watch it because it's amazing. So I'm going to talk about what happened. I'm going to talk about the plot points. I'm going to talk about things that I love and the characters and their stories and what's going on. And then at the end of each episode, I'm going to pick my favorite characters and I'm going to keep track of them and put them in a spreadsheet because I'm a nerd and I like numbers. So let's get started. We're going to start off by watching the first 5 episodes of Star Wars Rebels, episode 1 through episode 5. So let's just jump right into the first batch. So season 1, episode 1 of Star Wars Rebels, Spark of the Rebellion, part 1. It starts out with an opening shot. You get Darth Vader and the Inquisitor. Basically, the rundown is the Jedi are all gone, but the Inquisitor is told, hey, there's going to be some new Force-sensitive kids. You're going to hunt them down, and you're either going to indoctrinate them, or you're going to destroy them. And then we cut to this kid with blue hair. He's sitting on a tower, and suddenly the Star Destroyer flies overhead. You're going to want to remember this shot because it's referenced at the end of the series and in the Ahsoka trailer. And he zooms into the city on a speeder bike. And then we get our first intro. Now we're in the city, and you see a bunch of stormtroopers and other imps. By the way, I'm going to say imps a lot. It's short for Imperials, which is like the Empire. They use it in The Mandalorian, so I think I'm going to be fine. So anyway, these imps get this goat guy, and they catch him selling fruit without a license. So the imps are gonna arrest this goat guy for treason. Anyway, this blue kid passes by and he's begging. They tell him, screw off, kid. And the kid is just like, okay, I'm moving on. And he steals one of the imps' comms. And basically he makes a fake code red in order to save the goat guy. And as payment, he kind of takes some of the fruits for himself. And then we get to who I have in my notes called Agent Babyface. He's a supply master. We get Supply Master List. I referred to him exclusively in my head as Vax'ildan because Liam O'Brien voices that character, and it is the exact same voice. And I cried laughing the first time I realized that. So I'm just going to be calling him List from now on, but know that in my head he's Vax'ildan. So the imps that were just terrorizing that goat guy, they run up to List and they're like, what's the code red? And he's like, I didn't call code red. And then the blue kid just kind of watches from the rooftop of a building, kind of enjoying the chaos. And then what's that? Is that a whistling sound? Where's that coming from? This is one of the best parts of the show. And the kid turns around and he hears it again, and it's coming from this guy with a ponytail. He's not whistling. That's weird. Wonder what that is. Ponytail guy kind of walks down the street and stops, and he pats his leg, and then this purple alien gets up. Ponytail guy goes to do the same thing next to this Mando girl, and the Mando girl pats her leg, and the kid is like, something's going on. Anyway, the Mando girl walks in front of an Imperial speeder, blows it up, and then the chase is on. There's some crates. They want to get the crates. There's this big fight, and Ponytail guy starts shooting. He starts attacking. Purple alien guy joins in. They're fighting for the speeders, and then suddenly blue kid comes in, jumps on one of the speeders, and is like, see ya guys, and then chases on again. Speeder chase part 2, speeder boogaloo. The kid is speeding away, and the Mando girl jumps on one of the crates. She warns him, the big guy's gonna end you if he catches you. Good luck. And she takes one of the crates. A lot of chaos happens. There's a whole speeder chase, and while this is going on, everybody individually individual is like, who the heck? Everybody's outside the city now, going down the space highway. I don't know. Purple guy takes out his weapon. It's called a bow rifle. It's one of my favorite things in Star Wars because, again, I like the Lasat people. And this one. He just destroys one of the stormtroopers with it. Ponytail guy, he holds out his hands like he's handcuffed. He's like, up. You got me. Just kidding. And he tosses a bomb at the other imp speeder. And this is the moment that I fell in love with this guy. I knew I would eventually. I did not think it was going to be this early. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. I was like, there's two characters that I know I'm going to fall in love with eventually. I'm going to see how long you could put it off. It's like 5 minutes. Ponytail guy tells purple guy, hey, fall back, get the crates. He goes to catch up with the kid. Finally, I can start calling him Kanan because that's his name. Kanan stops the kid. They have an argument about stealing and whatever. And a TIE fighter comes in and blows up Kanan's speeder. And the kid gets away with the crate. Kid is now zooming away in a speeder and the TIE fighter blows up the speeder. The crate's okay though. And he's being chased by a TIE fighter now. Suddenly, the TIE fighter is blown up and a ship arrives. And Kanan is on the ship and he's like, hey, there's more TIEs coming. You want to come up? And he warns the kid, drop the crate. You're not going to make it. So anyway, the kid prepares, he runs, and he makes this huge jump. You start to wonder, I wonder how he did that. Is that just cartoons? It's not just the cartoon logic. They get on the ship. They open up the crate. Turns out there's guns in the crate. And the kid is like, oh my gosh, do you know how much we could sell those for? And Kanan's just like, yeah, that's why we're selling them. You look around and there's the purple guy on the ship. There's the Mando girl on the ship. Everybody's here. And immediately the purple guy and the kid are just fighting. Kanan goes to the cockpit and this is the moment I fall in love with the other character. Her name is Hera and she calls Kanan love in like the first sentence we see her, and I die inside because that is the cutest thing I've ever seen. I am in love with both of them individually and with them as a relationship. And also there's a droid there. Hera's like, spill, tell me what's going on. Eventually the kid and the purple guy, they just keep fighting and purple guy shoves the kid in a closet. Finally have names for the two characters. We have Zeb for the purple guy and Sabine for the Mando girl. There's a little bit of confusion. The people in the cockpit are like, where's the kid? And Zeb's like, he's right in here. And he opens the door to the closet. The kid's not there. He was crawling through a grate. And Hera takes this moment to tease Kanan. She's like, he's a little trouble. Sounds like someone I used to know. And Kanan is not impressed. The kid falls out of the vents and into a turret. And that's when he realizes he's in space. Sabine needs to do her job. And she gets in the turret. And she takes her helmet off to shoot. And she has the best hair ever. She always has the best hair in the show. Always a dye. Always so much fun. She's basically the coolest. And Ezra immediately has a crush. She doesn't care at all. She just kind of rolls her eyes. And Ezra tries to flirt. But he's just ignored because there's a space battle going on right now. Kid, read the room. Anyway, the ship goes to hyperspace, come back around, exit hyperspace almost immediately, and they're back on Lothal because the TIE fighters can't track them through hyperspace, so they think they're far gone. Back on Lothal, we meet Agent Pretty Boy with the dumb hat. Agent Callus, ISB. He connects some dots and he says the title of the show, not Star Wars Rebels. Spark of Rebellion. He says the title of the episode. Anyway, they exit hyperspace. Ezra's like, great, drop me off, but they can't because the job's not done yet. So they go to this little settlement in the middle of nowhere in Lothal called Tarkin Town, which is basically just like a bunch of people who the Empire took their homes and took their jobs, and they're just living together and trying to survive. And there's food in some of the crates. They're handing that out. This is the moment where Ezra kind of sees what the crew is talking about, how they aren't just stealing to survive. They're stealing so that other people can survive. While Ezra's getting this lesson, Kanan and Hera take the crates with the guns, and they give them to this guy named Vizago, who is sketch, but he doesn't like the Empire any more than the crew does. He just prefers capital over empathy. That's his deal. He gives them some of the money, but he offers payment in exchange for intel on the Wookiees. We'll find out what that means in a bit. Ezra's moping, starts hearing the whistles again, and he turns around and he heads back to the ship. Some more whistling, and he's kind of snooping, and he finds the door. He still hears the whistling, and there's this compartment under the bed, and there's this weird cube thing. It's called a holocron. He doesn't know that yet. We don't know that yet. In the show, you get to learn a lot about what holocrons do, and what they do is anything you want them to. So Ezra picks up this pretty cube. For the back in the compartment, he sees a lightsaber, and he lights it up, and he waves it around, like all of us would do if we've seen a lightsaber. And then he gets caught, because the droid that was wandering around snitched on him. And so Kaden and Hera are there, and Ezra's like, you're not gonna believe me, but it's like this thing called to me. Kaden's just like, you're right, I don't believe you. Get out. And so Ezra gives him the lightsaber, but he still has the cube. Anyway, Ezra and Sabine are chatting. Sabine gets all fast and furious, and she starts talking about how they're a family, so it's time for a family meeting. Ezra's being watched by Chopper, the droid, but that lasts for about 2 seconds because the kids start snooping. But basically what happens is they're like, this is what the mission's gonna be. There's some Wookiees, they're gonna be shipped. We're gonna catch them in transit so they don't get to whatever camp that the imps are gonna put them in. It's like basic plan. From this point on, while everybody else is on the mission, Hera's gonna keep an eye on Ezra, so they're gonna stay on the ship. So they have a little chat. Ezra's like, I don't get why you guys are doing this. Ezra hates the Empire, but not this much. They get permission to dock because Hera bluffs like a master. Anyway, they're in the Imperial ship. They're kind of split up. Comms are jammed, and they realize it's a trap. And Hera is like, Ezra, you need to go warn them. And the episode ends. So this episode, my favorite character was Hera. I don't know. I'm not going to give explanations for any or most of these. Just my favorite character was Hera for this episode. Anyway, season 1, episode 2, Spark of Rebellion, part 2. This episode picks up right where the last one ended with Hera. She continues to try to convince Ezra, like, hey, these people need their help. They're not going to make it without you. And Ezra resists, but can't help but help them. Anyway, Agent Pretty Boy's on the ship. I don't have any notes with that. It's just he's here. Anyway, Zeb and Kanan are like, why are there no guards? And Ezra runs into them. He's like, it's a trap. It's time to go. They open the door and there's no Wookiees. They're being chased by stormtroopers now. It's time to run. And Ezra has this little slingshot thing that he uses to zap the stormtroopers. So like that's a weapon, I guess. Chop and Sabine are in there. They're hacking the gravity. They're rigging the control room up to explode. And everybody's floating. That's part of the plan. They're the only ones who know they're gonna float, so they're prepared for it while everyone else is just scrambling around swimming in the air. So they get the gravity back. It's home stretch. Everybody's there. There's no Wookiees. It was a trap, etc. And everybody running back to the ship. And at the last second, Ezra gets caught by Callus. There's stormtroopers coming, and Ezra's not getting out of this. And so Zeb feels horrible, but he has to leave this kid behind. And then we get the intro. The crew gets away thanks to the explosion. And they're like, okay, cool. Zeb, where's the kid? Zeb's like, I thought he was with you. And Zeb gets full named by Hera. Like, you know, when your mom pulls out your full name, Hera full on goes, get rid of Zeb Aurelius. Anyway, it's terrifying. And it's established that Hera's mom. Back to Ezra, and Callus walks in the little cell. Callus asks, who are you? And Ezra says, Jabba the Hutt. And I'm pretty sure this is a running joke. Callus is going to interrogate him because that's his job. And Ezra's like, I don't know who these guys are. I literally just met them today. And then Callus is like, yeah, I don't really care. We're just going to use you as bait. And Ezra is like, they're not coming. Ezra has no faith in these people because his faith in the world has been shattered. Callus leaves. The troopers take Ezra's bag, but Ezra still has the cube. If you ever want to know how to open a holocron, just do what Ezra does. You throw it across the room, and Ezra takes a deep breath. He just kind of closes his eyes, and there's this whistling, and the cube starts to open, and suddenly, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a hologram of Obi-Wan Kenobi. What this is the transmission he gave from Revenge of the Sith. You know, it's after Order 66. It's the warning he gives to all remaining Jedi. Don't come back to the temple. It's not safe. Trust in the Force. We're back on the Ghost. The ship is called the Ghost, by the way. I don't think I've mentioned that. It's called the Ghost. They got a smaller ship attached to it called the Phantom. And then they're all Spectres, spelled S-P-E-C-T-R-E-S. Kanan Spectre 1, Hera Spectre 2, Chopper Spectre 3, etc. I don't think I ever explained that. I might put this earlier in the video. But anyway, we're back on the Ghost and they're having this meeting. Seb and Sabine are like, we just can't go back for him. It's too risky and he's already there and he's just a kid. They'll go easy on him. And Hera argues against this, like, no, he's a kid. We gotta go back for him. They just sit in silence and Chopper pops up and Chopper decides he's voting with Hera, so now it's a tie. The decision is up to Kanan. And then we cut back to Ezra in the cell doing one of my favorite things. You know, my uncle, the Emperor, is not gonna be happy when he hears hears about how you guys are treating me. And then he starts coughing, and then he just stops talking. The stormtroopers are like, what? And they open the door. Ezra gets out and locks the door for them. And so Ezra goes to the place they put his bags. He takes a little helmet for the road just because why not? He listens to the comms and he learns that the story with the Wookiees wasn't all made up, that the Wookiees are actually being sent to the space mines on Kessel. And after this, there's another person talking. He's like, the kids are gone, and everybody assumes like, oh, the rebels must have come back to help him escape. Anyway, Ezra does the same thing he did in the first episode where he goes on the comms and he's like, actually, here's some more information. Tells him, I think that's a diversion. We should spread out the troops, and it actually works, and there's less imps for them to deal with. Anyway, the ghost crew gets out. They start running down the hallway, and immediately Ezra drops in from the ceiling. He gets punched in the face by Zeb, but luckily his eyes the helmet. So they just kind of run back into the ship. As they're leaving, you see Callus kind of like notice the spray paint, and then he runs, and Sabine's spray paint is explosive because she is both the artist and the detonations expert. Because of Sabine's spray paint, they escape. Anyway, at this point, Ezra tells everybody where the Wookiees are going, and everyone's like, oh crap, Wookiees are from the forest. They won't survive for long on the space mines of Kessel. They're like, Ezra, should we take you home? And Ezra's like, might as well stay around and finish the job. Anyway, we get to Kessel. There's a little baby Wookiee that's adorable. An actual line that said is try not to get dead, which I love. There's a little battle when the ghost comes down. Ezra sneaks like he's good at, and he gets the Wookiees free. And basically, Pretty Boy and his dumb hat are back. There's more chaos and more troops. And then there's something that only Ezra notices. The baby Wookiee gets separated and chased by Stormtrooper, and they're going to the complete opposite direction of everybody else. Anyway, they're all cornered, they're all huddled behind these crates. Troopers are shooting at him. So Kanan decides he needs to do something. He gets up from behind the crates. He starts dodging blasters, and everybody's kind of shocked. And so Callus is like, hold your fire. And Kanan takes the two pieces of his lightsaber, attaches them together. He gets into his stance, and Callus says, all troopers, focus your fire on the Jedi, and you get chills, and it's just such a cool scene. This scene is actually something that I remember watching back when the series first came out, when I was a little baby 14-year-old who was kind of into Star Wars and was watching it on YouTube on my iPod. I just remember that was such a cool scene way back from then. How am I getting distracted from talking about my special interest? Anyway, so while Kanan's doing his Jedi distraction thing, all the Wookiees and the crew get into this big crate, but Ezra, he's still thinking about that Wookiee kid, and so he runs to go get the kid. And Zeb, he calls out to Ezra, and he's like, this is not my fault this time. And he goes to tell Kanan what Ezra did. Basically, the plan with the crate is just everybody gets in the crate, and then the ghost comes by and just picks it up. Zeb lets Kanan know what Ezra just did. So Ezra is chasing the stormtrooper that's chasing the Wookiee kid, and they're on this skinny little bridge. Ezra gets the stormtrooper's attention, does a super jump with the whistles and all such. It's a super jump right over and slingshots the trooper with his little stun balls, and the trooper falls over. And then we get Callus. Let me just say, his voice is amazing, and his lines are so pretentious and smug, and it's all just perfect, and it's just a joy whenever he's on the screen. So he's over there being smug about like, oh, I finally caught a Jedi and an apprentice or whatever. And we get this cool shot of Kanan standing on top of the ghost, and he has his lightsaber, and Callus shoots at him. Kanan deflects blaster fire back, and Callus just kind of like falls off the railing, and yay, they get away. And Callus and the stormtrooper that fell off earlier are like both clinging on to this support structure. And the trooper is like, first Jedi you've ever seen, sir, and then Callus just kicks him off for no reason. Anyway, so back on the ship, there's this really sweet reunion, and Kanan puts his hand on Ezra's shoulder like, I'm so proud, that kind of thing. We get a cool little fact that Sabine can translate for the Wookiees, and she's actually really good at translating. This will come into effect later. Yeah, the Wookiees leave, and now they're on Lothal, and it's time for Ezra to leave because there's no mission anymore, and he was not part of the crew. And we get a scene of Zeb not being good at pretending that he's excited Ezra's leaving. It's cute. They're family. There's a moment that the ship jolts, I think, when they land, and Ezra uses that moment to snatch Kanan's lightsaber. And so when they do land and Kanan's like, you have something that's mine, Ezra gives him, instead of the lightsaber, he gives him the holocron, and he goes back to his tower. And Kanan and Hera are just both kind of like staring at the holocron, and they're like, that is opened. Ezra's back in his tower. He's kind of like, well, what do I do now? He has a helmet collection, which is really cute. He has a bunch of Imperial helmets. Where did he get those? I never really thought about it. He's not on any missions or anything. Where'd he get them? Anyway, Ezra hears these whistles and he asks, what's the Force? The camera shifts and Kanan is right behind Ezra in the open doorway and he gives the whole speech that Obi-Wan gave Luke in episode 4. He's like, oh, the Force, it's around us, it binds us, penetrates us, and it's strong with you. And so it's at this point that Kanan gives Ezra a choice. Kanan gives Ezra a choice. You can either keep the lightsaber or you can come with us and I can train you in the Force. Ezra turns around and Kanan's just gone. And on the ship, Kanan opens the holocron and he listens to the Obi-Wan recording. And the recording just starts playing the same message over all these shots of the rest of the crew just doing their own thing. And at the end of the recording, Ezra opens Kanan's door and he's like, I want to go with you guys. And Kanan does another proud dad shoulder pat. They're family. Before the episode ends, we get one more little scene. Basically, Callus calls the Inquisitor to snitch on everybody. And the episode ends. That's it. That's how the series started. And my favorite character for this episode was Kanan. Anyway, at this point, I'm going to start skipping over things in my notes just because I don't have time. And that's why you should watch Rebels yourself. Season 1, Episode 3 is called Droids in Distress. Basically, at the start of the episode, the crew is low on supplies. They need money, which is an entire mood. They decided they're going to do one of Izaga's missions again. Kanan's already been briefed, and Ezra's like, why can't we just do Jedi training? Why can't I start my Jedi training? They're off to the mission, to the spaceport. Basically, there's this lady. Her name is Minister Tua. Here's the rundown. Minister Tua, she's this important imp lady. She's meeting with another person. They're going to be riding on the space bus together. Her companion doesn't speak basic, so she needs a translator. And so the translator are these two droids, and they are R2-D2 and C-3PO. So here's the plan. Chopper is going to be playing the part of Ezra's droid. Chopper is going to live his dream, and he is given full permission to be as annoying and as hostile to everybody as possible so that he can get yelled at to go to the back of the ship. Chopper gets singled out. Ezra's like, why don't those droids have to go in the back? The space bus driver droid is like, yeah, lady, your droids have to go into the back. So now the imp lady can't get any information for the rest of this flight. She's without a translator, and Zeb and Sabine are sitting right behind her. And Zeb's like, oh, maybe my friend here can help. And Sabine is like, oh, I don't know, but it would be good practice for my level 5 exams. And the imp lady is like, aw, I used to be a level 5 student at the academy. And so Sabine asks the guy, like, where's the shipment being held? And she hears the guy speak and she gives the biggest smile and she tells Minister Tua, Bay 17. While this is going down, 3PO and R2 are arguing in the back, and then Chopper and R2, they're throwing hands, which is the only way that scene could go, because if Chopper and R2 ever decided to collaborate on something, the entire galaxy would explode. So anyway, they're now on service. Sabine is just cheesing for the imp lady, and when Minister Tua leaves, Sabine's like, actually, it's Base 7. And so Ezra sneaks around, jumps around, you know, the two things he's best at, sneaking and jumping, and he's doing the third best thing he's good at, which is complaining about Jedi training over the comms. Ezra gets to the bay, opens the doors, and everyone's there, and they're all just kind of like, I wonder what is in these crates. And so they open one up, and as soon as Zeb sees what inside, he jumps back, and he's like panicking, and it's not played for laughs. It's not played for comedy. And then Sabine, she also recognized there are T7 ion disruptors. These were banned by the Senate. You can short circuit an entire ship with these. And Zeb just kind of has this horrified look on his face, traumatized. He just has this broken look on his face, like that's not why they were banned. Not going into too much detail, go watch Rebels now or when the video's done. Minister Tua kind of like connects the dots, figures out there's something going on. They go to the real bay. They all run and they get caught with the shipment. Tua's like, hey, they have my disruptors. And Zeb just kind of like goes hands up. Must be some mistake. Can't possibly be disruptors in there because they're illegal, right? And then as soon as the troopers like get to him, he just kicks butt and he takes out his bow rifle, which again, one of my favorite Star Wars weapons. There's battle, again, Zeb kicking butt. Everybody runs away, gets to the Ghost. While all that happened, R2 also went up to the Ghost, and then 3PO followed, and they get away with the shipment. There's conversations happening, and they're talking about what to do with these imp droids, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, these are Imperial droids. Technically, 3PO and R2 are Imperial. So anyway, they're being watched by Ezra and Chopper. But through all this, R2's just kind of like taking video, spying. Good for them. R2's recording this conversation. Basically, Zeb asks, please can we not sell these to Vizago? We just need to get these out of circulation. And Sabine says, like, at least the imps don't have it. These were actually being shipped as prototypes so that they could be mass produced on Lothal. Kanan's just like, yeah, I mean, they're not going to imps and we get the money. And Sabine suggests selling the droids. Kanan's like, we'll see. Zeb is just really uneasy. He's like, we're not going to sell the droids, but we're going to sell disruptors. Anyway, so what happens is Minister Tua calls Callus about the rebels, and she's like, and there was a Lasat. Honestly, Agent Callus, I didn't think there were any Lasats left. And Callus is like, a few, Minister, only a few. I love whenever he talks. I love whenever he shows up. We're back to the ghost, and Zeb kicks Ezra out of his own room because they share a room now. And Hera has kind of a mom talk with Ezra. Ezra cut him a little bit of slack, and Ezra's like, he never cuts me slack. Why should I? And Hera's like, do you know what a T7 disruptor does to an organic being? Zeb knows because the Empire used those disruptors to clear Zeb's home world. And she tells him that there's only a few Lasat left and none of them are on Lasan. And Ezra at this point, he feels kind of bad. All right, a little bit of slack. And then Hera's proud of him for that. She's like, yeah, you're a good kid. She's like, how's Jedi training going? He's like, it's not going. And then Hera's just kind of like, we'll see about that. And you just know Kanan's gonna be in so much trouble. We get kind of like the end of a conversation between Kanan and Hera right as they're about to land. And Hera calls Kanan love again. And my heart I just love when Hera calls anyone love. R2 is like, actually, our real mission was to stop the disruptors from getting to the Empire. And also, my master will pay handsomely for my return. And Kanan's like, I'll think about it. And we get some more of Zeb being salty about the T7s, which is completely reasonable. Then we go see Callus, and it turns out he's actually getting a call from 3PO, who is snitching on the rebels. And this is going to be the first tangent where I'm going to go off. Something I noticed this last watch is that Callus is kind to 3PO despite him being a droid. Callus says, remain calm, my friend. All I need is your location. And then once 3PO does give the location, Callus says, have no fear, help is on the way. Like any other imp and a bunch of regular people in the galaxy would have just rolled their eyes at 3PO's dramatics or demanded the necessary information. But Callus spoke gently and attempted to calm 3PO, and he even stayed on the line after getting the intel to reassure 3PO, the droid, that 3PO is gonna be okay. In the Star Wars universe, how people treat droids says a lot about their character. It would have been so easy to have Callus demand information on the rebels, since that's his whole deal, it's his whole job, and he's kind of obsessed with it. I just think it's really cool that the writers decided to give him a little bit of depth this early on, even though this is episode 3 of a Disney show, and this is the main bad guy so far. It's just something really cool to think about. Anyway, rant over. We're back at Vizago, and Zeb is being salty again. Well justified. And oops, the Empire is here, so Vizago takes some of the guns without payment and scrams, and they're like, okay, Sabine, destroy the guns so they don't get to the imps. And R2 and her come up with a plan. There's big battle, there's some Imperial walkers, etc. You know, battle stuff. The stormtroopers come down and 3PO runs. He's like, oh, I'm being rescued. But then the stormtroopers don't care and they just shoot right past him, right at him. He's like, no, you're supposed to rescue me. At this point, Chopper goes to get the ship ready. At this point, Callus singles out Zeb and he pulls out a modified bow rifle from his back and he demands a one-on-one battle with Zeb. And Zeb, he is rage incarnate, and he yells, only the honor guard of Lasan may carry a bow rifle. And then Callus cackles. He says, I know, I removed it from the guardsmen myself. And Callus continues to taunt Zeb, saying he was there when Lasan fell, saying he gave the order to use the disruptors. And Zeb's rage just multiplies. There's this amazing fight between the two of them, and all this stuff is happening around them, and they blow up the guns, but Zeb ends up getting zapped by the end of the bow rifle a few times, and Callus has the bow rifle over his head. He's about to slam it down on Zeb, and Ezra yells no, and then he force pushes Callus away, and he saves Zeb. Everyone just kind of like is shocked looking at him. Like, that's the first real time that Ezra's used the Force, other than listening to the Force and noticing things or enhancing his natural abilities. And so everyone is just kind of shocked. But then they recover, and then they all get away safely. Once they're safe, Kanan finally says that Ezra's gonna start start his Jedi training tomorrow. And so now it's time for the final scene, and Kanan returns the droids to their owner, who, yes, is Bail Organa. And Bail says something. I can't remember what. And Kanan recognizes it, and he says, "Isn't that a Jedi sighting?" So Kanan gets paid, and finally at the end, Bail gets R2's spy recording, and he starts getting information on the rebels. That's the end of the episode, and this episode, I feel like it's not going to be a surprise. This episode, my favorite character was Zeb. Alright, I really got to start getting faster, because this was about the length of an entire episode. This episode's next theme is the Kanan Instinct. Season 1, Episode 4, the title is Fight or Flight. Episode starts off with Ezra trying to lift a bull, and he finally succeeds, except, he doesn't. Chopper was pulling a prank on him. And so Ezra goes to chase Chopper, and they pass by Sabine spray painting in her room. Ezra tries to flirt, but she turns it into a burn on him. Ezra keeps chasing Chopper. They get into Ezra's room where Zeb is sleeping, and he says, "You wake me, you die," which is a huge mood. Chopper goes to zap Ezra, ends up zapping Zeb. Zeb is angry. He's about to get Ezra when Ezra pulls the "I saved your life" card. Ezra pulls the "Hey, I just saved your life if you're about to beat me up." And yeah, I kind of noticed this is kind of like an honor thing, which is going to be wait a couple seasons. Honor is a huge thing to Zeb, and so of course he's not gonna attack Ezra when there's like a life debt. Zeb gets back on his bottom bunk. Ezra goes on the top, except Chopper messed with the beds. The top bunk falls right onto Zeb. They start chasing each other, and the intro starts. Hera decides these two need to get out of the house, so she sends Zeb and Ezra shopping, and she tells them don't come back without at least one Melu run. While at the market, Ezra meets this guy named Mr. Sumar, who is an old friend of his parents, and he tells them there's no Melu runs on Lothal. Sorry, bud. Supply Master List comes by, and he confronts Mr. Sumar, and it's really funny to me because they both have the same voice actor, and I only know that voice as an edgy half-elf, and so they're just having this confrontation, and I'm like, that's the same person. Anyway, Zeb's almost all done with the shopping. He did literally all of the work, and all they need left is the Melu run. You know, there's some more stuff. Watch the episode. They're being siblings. You know how siblings are. If you don't have siblings, this is what it's like. They end up actually finding Melu runs, but turns out they've all already been sold to the Empire. Ezra decides, hey, I'm gonna use the Force on the fruit, but it ends up not working because the lid gets shut. Ezra ends up climbing on top of the ship, and he finally gets a Melu run, but he gets caught, and so Zeb distracts the stormtroopers by chucking their groceries at him, and now they don't have supplies. I swear, this crew has one brain cell, and it's traded between Sabine and Hera. They get split up, Zeb gets cornered, he's stuck between troopers and a TIE fighter, and what ends up happening is he ends up throwing the pilot out of the TIE fighter and stealing the TIE fighter. And so he catches up to Ezra, who is running across rooftops, as one does when you're in Star Wars. Anyway, Zeb's like, if I let you in, then we're even, right? And Ezra's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And this is just peak sibling behavior. We cut back to the ghost, and we get a little hint at Sabine spray painting something that's not in her room. Back to the TIE fighter. The window has been covered in gunk because they're crashing around the market. They're out of the city, they're flying around, and we get some more whistles. Ezra uses the Force to dodge the Lothal Hills. Yeah, I put it here in my notes. I don't think I've ever explained. The whistles are the Force. Like, we all get that, right? The little sound is the Force, which I think is really cool. It's a really good way to highlight what it's like to have this extra sense and what it's like to have it at the back of your mind. Like, oh, there's something over there that needs my attention. Anyway, Hera and Kanan are enjoying peace and quiet without the kids around, and Zeb and Ezra talk to them. They're like, hey, we stole a TIE fighter, and they're both just like, you did what? Get rid of it. Because, like, yeah, it's super dangerous, and Ezra and Zeb don't want to. Because, yeah, it's really cool. They stole a TIE fighter, but they didn't even deactivate, like, the tracker on it, so you know that they're gonna be in trouble. Anyway, List arrives at Mr. Sumar's farm. It's still the same voice actor, and it's still funny. Yeah, he arrests him, takes the farm. Ezra and Zeb go to save Sumar in this weird-looking prisoner transport. Zeb and Ezra are bad at bluffing. Ezra gets down there, uses the Force to unlock the prisoners, and he starts fighting. I'm skipping over a lot of really good lines because I just don't have time to highlight them. Ezra's fighting. He ends up throwing fruit at the troopers because his little lightning zaps are not doing anything. List is left alone. He's got no prisoners. A bunch of his troops are gone. He's frustrated, and then Ezra steals a fruit and gets pulled into the TIE fighter by Zeb. Ezra and Zeb just kind of agree, okay, we are eternally even because there's no way that they're going to be keeping track. There's this really nice moment where Zeb holds up the pilot's helmet and he's like, hey, you collect these, right? And Ezra's like, oh, I already have one. And Zeb's ears droop and he gets kind of sad. And Ezra sees this and he's like, oh, but this is a nice one. I really like it. I'll get Sabine to paint it. Thanks. This is really cute. Like, that's like a sibling thing. Zeb and Ezra are late to getting back to the Ghost. Kanan and Hera are standing outside, being parents, being mad that their kids are coming home late. And finally, Zeb and Ezra arrive and they come back with exactly one Melu run. It's like, guys, you guys did a whole lot of shopping. I'm pretty sure Melu runs are Hera's favorite fruit, though. So they also mention that they crashed the TIE fighter on purpose so that they wouldn't be tracked. And Kanan's actually really proud of that. Remember this for later. So yeah, they're getting along and they get back to their room and Sabine is finally finished with her project. She spray paints an image of the bunk bed incident, which makes them both look really dumb. They both kind of decide this is Chopper's fault, and so they go to chase Chopper, and this episode ends, they're all a family. Yeah, my favorite characters this episode was Zeb. It was kind of a toss-up between Zeb and Ezra, though. All right, we've got one more episode left, and then I can go to bed. All right, last episode of this batch. Season 1, Episode 5, called Rise of the Old Masters. This episode starts off strong, with Ezra doing headstands on top of the Ghost while it's flying. Kanan's like, hey, you need to focus, and Ezra's like, I'm trying. We all know where this is going. Kanan shoots back with, do or do not. There is no try. And Ezra's just like, what does that mean? And Kanan's just like, actually, that one kind of confused me too. I just remember Master Yoda saying it a lot. And Zeb and Chopper are heckling and making fun of Ezra. They're like, come on, entertain us. Do something interesting. And so Kanan decides for training, Zeb and Chopper are going to throw these empty milk bottles at Ezra while he deflects them with a lightsaber. And it goes about as well as you would expect. And Ezra falls off the Ghost. And we get the intro. Kanan force lifts Ezra into the Ghost and Chopper throws one last bottle at him. We get to see the Lothcat, and it just makes me really happy. Also, my dog loves watching animals on TV, so whenever the Lothcat show up, just know that his ears are perking up. Anyway, Kanan lectures Ezra about being unfocused and undisciplined, and Ezra's sassing back. Sabine's watching the HoloNet and the Sky named Gall Travis. Yeah, they just put a Y in the middle of the name Travis. So Gall Travis interrupts the broadcast, and it turns out he's a senator that speaks out against the Empire. And so Travis says Luminara Unduli is alive, and she's been taken to this Imperial prison. He starts making demands and calling for her to have a fair trial instead of being unfairly imprisoned. His hacking gets undone, and it's the broadcast as usual. And so Kanan is like, I think she'd be a good teacher for Ezra, and Ezra just immediately feels heartbroken and abandoned. There's always been rumors that Luminara had survived the Clone Wars, but now there's a location. They can do something about it. The whole crew basically agrees that, yeah, let's go rescue her. They're using the Phantom, which is the ship that's attached to the Ghost. They're using it because it's small. And then before the mission, Kanan says, try to stay focused. And Ezra's just like, I thought there was no try. And Kanan is just done with this kid. So they have to be careful because this is one of the most secure Imperial prisons in the galaxy. So Kanan sneaks in and takes down these troopers masterfully and almost silently. And Ezra is inspired by this. And so he decides to come in early and crash the party and make a lot of noise. Zeb and Sabine come down and they're kicking butt. And once the stormtroopers are taken care of, Kanan takes a moment to emphasize this is why Ezra needs Luminara as a teacher. Ezra just says, I was just following your example. Kanan's like, well, you should follow the plan. They get in. Kanan consents Luminara, but something's off. We go back to Hera in the Phantom, and there's these big, like, bird bat monsters about the size of the Phantom, and they keep bumping up against the ship, and Hera realizes, oh no, the jammer that Sabine was using is operating at the same frequency as that species' mating call, so she has to fly away. Sabine and Zeb are told to hold the lift while Kanan and Ezra go get Luminara, and Kanan is just kicking butt this mission. He is taking down everybody. This is no nonsense. Finally, they get to the cell, and Kanan uses a mind trick on the guards, and Ezra and Kanan get into the cell. And sitting right there in front of them is Master Unduli. But something's wrong, and she just kind of gets up and walks into the wall and backs into it. And it's a corpse. There's a dead body of a Jedi Master. This is a children's show that aired on Disney XD. This is episode 5. Anyway, the Inquisitor appears and he jams the signal and is like, yeah, she died, but we're getting some use out of her. Like, holy crap, dude. And so 3 seconds into fighting Kanan, the Inquisitor is like, your master was Depa Billaba. This means that Kanan and Ezra are from Mace Windu's lineage, because Mace Windu trained Depa Billaba, who trained Kanan Jarrus, who is training Ezra Bridger. Ezra's last name is Bridger, by the way. I don't think I've ever said that. I've mentioned Bridges, but not Bridger. Anyway, during all this, Ezra ends up blowing the door and they escape. And it's this moment where he introduces the dark side to Ezra. Like, Ezra, he hasn't even been told about the dark side, but like, he's not impressed. Anyway, more explosions as Sabine and Zeb blow up the lift and disable all the others. And the Inquisitor says, your master cannot save you, boy. He is unfocused and undisciplined. And Ezra just says, well, then we're perfect for each other. I just think that's really sweet. They're a family. Something, something Fast and Furious. After Ezra says that, the Inquisitor activates the spinny blade. He has a helicopter blade. I love this. I love how stupid it is. I love how dumb it looks and how it doesn't really make sense. I love it so much. It's just silly, but it would be terrifying in real life. Gosh, I love this. I love when Star Wars is allowed to be silly and dumb. Anyway, the team's back together. They're running from the Inquisitor, and we get this cool scene of Ezra and Kanan have to unlock this bay door using the Force, and they do it together, and doors open, battle, flight, explode again, brings in the fleet of the flappy guys from earlier, and then they run towards the Phantom, and the Inquisitor is chasing them, and he activates the spinny saber, and he throws the spinny saber, and Kanan plays baseball with it. It is the dumbest. I laughed so hard when I first saw that. Up to that point, it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen in Star Wars. I love it so much. This is what makes Star Wars better. It is just so good. Anyway, they're back on Lothal, and Ezra is just kind of sitting on the ramp of the Ghost. And Ezra and Kanan have a talk. Kanan explains, I just wanted you to have the best teacher. And Ezra says, well, I don't want the best teacher. I want you. And then he kind of realizes that's not a great thing to say. That's a backhanded compliment. Kanan just kind of interrupts them and says, look, I won't try to teach. I will teach. And he finally explains what it means, do or do not, there is no try. And so they end. Ezra does some more lightsaber Jedi training. Kanan throws rocks at him, and Ezra hits him with a lightsaber. They play baseball as a father and son do, and it's really sweet. And my favorite character this episode was Kanan. All right, so that's the first 5 episodes of Star Wars Rebels. I did not do these justice. I could not do these episodes justice. This first season is made up of 15 episodes, so we're just going to do 5 each time. So we're going to be watching the next 5 episodes. That's going to be Breaking Ranks, Out of Darkness, Empire Day, Gathering Forces, and Path of a Jedi. And if you're wondering where Ahsoka comes into all this, just be patient. She will come in later. There are some plot points in the first season that will carry through the rest of the show. But yeah, I'm not really sure how this is gonna go. I'm not sure how long it's gonna take me to edit this, but I am recording this on July 14th, so like a month and a week until Ahsoka comes out, depending on how I manage my time, which is historically not great. I should be able to get these out before Ahsoka starts. But yeah, I really love Rebels. It is my favorite show, and I basically have just been looking for an excuse to talk about the show for a long time. And I know some people who don't have really an interest in sitting down and watching the entirety of the show, which is an excuse. No, it's fine. But yeah, I really do hope that you enjoyed this and that it made you a little bit more interested to actually watch the show, because especially at the end there when I realized I was taking way too long, there's a lot of like quotes and little plot points and little character details that I just had to skip over because it would have been as long as the actual episode. I really hope you enjoyed this. I took notes while I rewatched the episode, so I hope it wasn't just a confused mess of me rambling about what I'm currently hyperfixated on. What else do I want to say? So if you want to, which I encourage, watch the next 5 episodes, and may the Force be with you.